Happy Wednesday to all. Good morning to those calling in from Chicago. Good afternoon to those calling in from Germany and Europe, and good evening to those in Asia that are joining us. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Chicago Hamburg digitization of the TDL industry. We will begin the ceremony now with welcome remarks from World Business Chicago's President and CEO, Andy Zapp.
Thank you, Kyle, and guten Tag to my friends in Hamburg, and good day to everyone else who's joining us, and good morning to my friends from Chicago. We are so pleased to be here with you today, and I am thrilled to be able to welcome you to our Chicago-Hamburg Virtual Economic Exchange, which is focused on the digitization of the TDNL industry. My name, as Kyle said, is Andy Zapp. I'm the President and CEO of World Business Chicago. World Business Chicago is the city's economic development organization. Our mission is to grow Chicago's economy inclusively, and that means recruiting companies here, but also helping to grow our partnerships and relationships with countries and cities around the globe. And that includes Hamburg, which is why it's a real privilege for me to be with you this morning. We have had a long and positive relationship with Hamburg since 1994. Chicago and Hamburg have enjoyed a collaborative and strong sister city relationship that has connected our cities on topics of government, culture, education, and sports, and also, of course, on economy. And today's economic exchange is part of that. This economic impact has been possible because of, I forgot a fact. Chicago has been #1 in foreign direct exchange in the United States and foreign direct investment in the United States for the last 7 years in a row. And a big part of that growth and leadership is because of German companies that have invested here in Chicago and in the Chicago region. While we continue to deal with the recession caused by COVID, it is more important than ever to build partnerships like the one we are enhancing with this discussion today. One of the other reasons that this conversation is particularly important is because the TDNL sector is an important part of Chicago's economic recovery strategy. Back in the spring, Mayor Lightfoot convened a group of business leaders, civic leaders, and community leaders to come together to build a strategy for Chicago's economic recovery post-COVID. And part of that effort was identifying the sectors that we believed that would be strong areas for growth and potential, and particularly growth where we could create opportunities for jobs for more of our residents. And transportation, distribution, and logistics sector is at the top, one of those critical sectors for us. We are already a leading space. We have a leading space there here in Chicago. We have 24 of the top 25 third-party logistics providers. It's the second largest by number employed in the United States here in Chicago. And we have the largest intermodal system in the Western Hemisphere and the third largest globally. And as many of you know, COVID has accelerated e-commerce, making TDL and especially last mile delivery more critical. And innovation and technology continues to grow in that space. We are a leader in the innovation sector as well. When you consider Chicago's TDL strengths, coupled with that which you enjoy in Hamburg, we are the second largest city, a major driver of the country's economy. You're a major port city, incredible industrial and commercial life, and a strategic location in Germany. It is proof that our partnership is made to grow and to be built and support both countries and cities. So I want to thank you for your friendship and your partnership. We are excited about the conversation we're going to have today. And it's my pleasure now to introduce Kolja Harders, the Foreign Trade Division, Ministry for Economy and Innovation, Free and Hanseatic City of Hamburg.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you so much. Welcome everybody from Hamburg. It's great to be part of this. As Andy just introduced myself or me, I'm Kolja Harders. I'm the head of the Division for International Economic Cooperation of Hamburg. And to all of those who are not that familiar with Hamburg, Hamburg is not only, as it's just been said, Germany's second largest city, but a city-state at the same time. So basically, we are Chicago and Illinois all at once. So that's why you see me here today with you working in a Ministry for Economy and Innovation. Hamburg is, as I said earlier, Germany's second largest city, about 5.4 million people in the metro area. And we take a lot of pride in being the home to one of Europe's most successful economies. And as you can imagine, we're good at many things, but in one particular in the area of logistics, because we call one of the largest ports of the world and of Europe our backbone of our economy. The Port of Hamburg and all the logistics around the Port of Hamburg employ more than 300,000 people who are working for more than 10,000 companies. So those figures are quite impressive. And of course, we would like to keep it that way. And in order to not only rely on the successes of the past, but rather to remain globally competitive, we are reaching out to all our good partners globally to address all the challenges that we are faced today. And speaking of challenges, I guess we are faced, all of us are faced by the very same challenges today. With regard to Hamburg, maybe you can see it in the background here. The Port of Hamburg is located right in the heart of the city. So if you imagine our city being like a circle, Hamburg is the port is a little dot right in the middle of that circle. So in order to grow and to turn over more containers, we need to become more efficient. And to do that, we have digitalized our port, and we are continuously doing smart port, improving ourselves and implementing smart port technologies into our port. I'm sure we will learn more about this later from my dear friend from the Hamburg Port Authority, who's on the panel today. Another challenge, well, challenging is already being married, but another challenge is that I'm married to my wife, and I'm not really sure whether my wife is married to me or to the TDL guy who shows up every day on our front door. I'm referring to the tremendous increase of online purchases and the respective deliveries, but it's not only the increase in the number of packets that are delivered every day, but it's also the different expectations behind that. My wife and I, we have two sons. They are 10 and 14 years old, and they have basically two statuses in life. They're either asleep or online. And when they see something online, they want to have it right away. They cannot wait. So there's a lot of packets to be delivered, and those packets are better delivered as soon as possible. All of this leads to congestions and traffic jams in our city. And this again is challenging because it is also one of our core ambitions to reduce CO2 emissions. So what we're basically trying here in Hamburg is to develop new concepts for the last mile. We are embracing new technologies to make our city and the handling of goods smarter. This is one of the reasons why we have been chosen to host the ITS, the Intelligent Transport and Infrastructure Congress in 2021 here in Hamburg. That will provide a lot of showcases of what we're currently doing. And whatever we are trying to do and whatever we are doing, there are no constraints, there are no barriers to any sort of creative solutions. For example, our local terminal operator has come up with ideas of, for example, using drones to take out empty containers out of the port, or maybe even using Hyperloop technology to quickly send containers underground within the port area. Just to provide you with some examples of the ideas that have come up here in Hamburg. And some of those ideas indeed may sound like science fictions, and others, and some of them might never become reality. But what should indeed become reality is a closer exchange between Hamburg and Chicago, because it's in the city of Chicago and it's in the city of Hamburg where innovation actually happens, because both of our cities, we are confronted with all the daily challenges much sooner than anywhere else. And we have the brains and the money to address all those issues. And secondly, also, because innovation doesn't happen if you just stay at home. You shouldn't bother trying to reinvent the wheel on your own, rather than to reach out to others and try to jointly find new solutions. And that's why I'm very excited that this webinar was possible here today, and this exchange between Hamburg and Chicago has finally become reality. So thank you once again from my side. Having said that, of course, it's a tremendous pleasure to hand over to much smarter people than I am. And one of those people is definitely Beth Hond. And Beth is not only working for a German company, the German company of Bosch, so she's quite familiar with great technology, but as an American working for a German company, she's also very familiar with both cultures. And we are delighted to have Beth today here as our moderator. And yeah, from my side, thank you so much for joining us today. And Beth, I'll hand it over to you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kolja. I was so excited when I heard that this panel was taking place, and excited to moderate, because when I think of Hamburg, I actually see it through the eyes of 16-year-old Beth, and going on the river past the Hamburg seaport. And the Port Authority there, it is just something to behold. It is, you know, just hundreds of millions of tons of goods being shipped across the sea in containers, and the, you know, autonomous arms that are lifting them into the air. So it's an incredible sight to see, going into the port and going to the spice market. So I'm very excited to be participating in this conversation, introducing some of our panelists to talk a lot about the innovations that are occurring and digitization of TDL. But my work at Bosch is focused in urban mobility and how megacities move people and things. And Chicago was chosen as our North America hub because not only of the world-class intermodal systems for moving people, but because this is quite literally the crossroads of East and West, and such an epicenter for freight and the movement of goods. And in fact, Chicago sees 65% of all imported goods that come into our country, either through our roads, rails, airports, through our lock systems. And then, of course, our sister city in Germany is known as the gateway to the world. Opened in the 10th century, the seaport sees, I think, over 300 million tons per year. That probably is a lower estimate. But as we go into kind of the innovations that are occurring to keep up with the science fiction that Kolja alluded to, I want to introduce our panelists who can give us some really, really practical examples of how private and public organizations are really working together to do that. So first up, we have Mr. Chuck Medhurst, who is president and GM of BMW Technology Group. Mr. Johannesburg, who has ensured he is actually not from South Africa, but Mr. Johannesburg is Managing Director of Digital Hubs Logistics for Hamburg. And Kate Calabra is here from City Tech Collaborative, which is a civic innovation accelerator. And then we have Dr. Pantian Zusomdim, who's head of digital business transformation at the Hamburg Port Authority. And in alphabetical order, I will ask each one of our incredible panelists to do a little bit more of an intro about the tactical work they're doing in TDL. So Mr. Chuck Medhurst.
Hi, I'm Chuck Medhurst, head of BMW Technology here in Chicago. As you're probably aware, there's key things that are changing within the automotive industry, logistics industry. A big thing that BMW started about 5 years ago was to jumpstart the digital services group and really move from a 100-year-old metal bending type company into more of a digital services business. We've got 3 prongs right now that we're working on there that are really the big drivers for us going forward. Electrification, which you're probably all aware of, especially in Europe. The autonomous driving that we participate with as partners, and then also the digital service side as far as developing the BMW connected app and the car cloud platform. Our group is focused on really those digital services, and within that, then we work across with our Munich-based colleagues and also global associates throughout BMW across the world to develop this for the entire BMW customer base in about 45 global countries right now. Thank you.
And Mr. Johannesburg.
Yes, good morning to our friends in Chicago, and good afternoon to everybody who's joining in from Hamburg or Germany or Europe. My name is Johannes. I'm the Managing Director of the Digital Hub Logistics here in Hamburg, and the Digital Hub Logistics is in a nutshell a fitness club for digitization and innovation along the entire logistical value chain. And you all know what happens if you become a member of a fitness club, but you don't go and train, you don't get fit. And that's exactly what we urge our partners and startups here in Hamburg to do. We are home to over 60 startups from very early stage to already very matured startup who have raised a Series A or Series B, who are very heterogeneous in terms of which areas of logistics and supply chain they're active in, whether it's in the maritime field, whether it's in intralogistics, road and rail, or air cargo. And we bring these people together with the likes of my colleague Pantian, who will also be speaking on behalf of the Hamburg Port Authority, with colleagues from DHL, the group logistics department from Volkswagen, Lufthansa, and many more. And so we've started off as a physical platform for digital process, product, and business model innovations in logistics. Of course, but I guess we'll come to that in a minute. Over the last month, we've also gained traction in terms of becoming a digital platform for doing so, for training in the digital field. And yeah, that's from my side, and I look forward to the discussion to follow.
Beautiful. And Kate from CityTech.
Hi everyone, I'm Kate Collaborator from CityTech Collaborative. We are an urban solution accelerator looking to solve problems that are too big for one entity to solve on their own. And freight and logistics definitely fits into that sweet spot. And CityTech first started dabbling in freight and logistics through our Advanced Mobility Initiative, where our first project was looking at demand management for the curb. And we realized a lot of congestion was big piece of logistics challenges. And now we've expanded our work to look at bottlenecks across the entire supply chain and try to leverage our partners' expertise and resources to get in some solutions.
And Doctor. I wonder if she'll let us tell you what her name means, but Dr. Pantian Zusongdem, head of digital business transformation at Hamburg Port Authority.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, as you said, Pantian Zusongdem is my name, and I'm head of digital and business transformation at the Hamburg Port Authority at the Chief Digital Office. And what I have been doing since 2013 is to make the Port of Hamburg one of the smartest ports in the world. And from our philosophies and the strategic set up to bring the Hamburg port being the most intelligent port is really to set up 3 pillars into our strategic area of activities. The first thing is that we would like to make our infrastructure smart so that the cargo flows could be run smoothly. And then the second thing is that we would like also to equip the intelligence into our cargo movement in the port. And last but not least, every activities that we have been doing so far have to also turn on into and sustainable solutions. And that is the 3 pillars that we are looking for solution worldwide. And as Johannes said, we are a member of this fitness club at the Digital Hub Logistics. We have been working together with Johannes from the first hour, I would say, and also not only myself, but also my colleagues and other colleagues in the port ecosystem of Port of Hamburg. They are using also the Digital Hub Logistics as the, I would say, it's like the seed where we could grow some plans into the logistics scenes, and everything that we do in the digital solution, we would like to bring up new talents and also this existing problems that we have in the logistics scene, which we know today that how fragmented the logistics in the service are, and most of the time logistics earns money off the discrepancies of the information in transparency. And that's why we would like also to make the vision of these type of, I would say, the visibilities as a commodity of the logistics to become reality. And that's why we are working quite a lot also at the European level to see how we could make a federation of the platform economies, making it in reality, so that the service provider and also the service consumers, they could really share their data in the trust and secure manner, so that they are willing to consume the service and to share data to make the logistic process more smoothly. And that could be the benefit from every stakeholders in the supply chains and logistics.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think paramount is not only knowledge sharing, but data sharing in order to really achieve the sustainability, the reduction in congestion, and digitization. So all of our viewers that are watching now, as you can see, we've got some really incredible thought leaders who can answer questions. So please go ahead and add those to the chat as you think about them, and we will ask those throughout this panel. So first question, I think I would love to go to Johannes, just because, you know, this Fit Club, the 60 startups that you have really working on innovations to change the transport industry. What are a lot of those that you're seeing come in, and how are they attacking everything from global logistics all the way down to last mile?
What we are seeing, what I touched upon in my intro, is that if you pop up with the name startup in a discussion and logistics, you have to be a little bit more detailed in looking at what are these startups actually aiming at. Do they want to optimize or improve existing processes? So are they looking into the fields of process innovation? Do they really have an idea for a new product that delivers our parcels faster, more sustainable, more efficient and effective on the last mile? So are they in the field of product innovations? Or are they saying, hey, we know some companies who have optimized their data mining, their data analytics and algorithm work already, but we have a new business model idea for this entire segment of logistics. So process, product, business model, that's how we always look at new startups coming into the hub. And then we see, okay, which segment of logistics and supply chain are these startups targeting? In many cases of process innovations, it's not the case that these startups are saying, hey, we are the disruptors of logistics and we want to disrupt an entire industry and put DHL and FedEx out of business. They want rather to help them to get the next, to take the next step on the digitization and innovation ladder. The field or the number of innovations is paramount. I mean, we have seen, of course, in Hamburg, many startups who are saying we want to really improve some processes in the port environment and everything that has to do with on the ship and off the ship and in the vicinity of the harbor. We are seeing many startups who are going more into product and business model innovations in intralogistics. And in particularly over the last 9 months with the COVID pandemic affecting us all, we've seen some success stories of startups who are really an on-demand, on-time B2B, but also B2C last-mile delivery cases.
And Dr. Pantian, I wonder, you know, you mentioned smart infrastructure and outfitting infrastructure to make a lot of that operation much more seamless. You know, do you have any examples of how those kinds of innovations, when they're put out into the field, can really either reduce the amount of time that it's taking to get something from A to J to Z, Would love any anecdotes or tangible examples around smart infrastructure innovation really transforming logistics.
What we have been doing since a couple of years now is really starting from the design of the infrastructures that we are doing the maintenance and operation with, the technologies on the Internet of Things. So we are equipping our infrastructure objects and assets with those of the sensors which is monitoring our assets 24/7. And then we try to collect all of these data and make them in analytics way to feed us with some of the insights or intelligence to the infrastructural health of each of the assets. And then from that point of view, we could reallocate our priorities, how we would do maintenance and repair activities in our infrastructure planning for the maintenance and operation in much better way, so that the infrastructures which we have in Hamburg port as a limited resources, because we can really expand the size of the port according to the growth of the cargo volume flowing in and out of the port, as the other port could do. So we would like to use these digitalizations and this digital innovation to increase digitally the capacities of our infrastructure, so that once that we know that they are low demand of the infrastructure use, so we are trying to see how we could reallocate the resources and the maintenance and operational service, so that you don't need to close down those routes for the, for example, for the truck or for the train, and then you can provide this infrastructure according to the base prognosis on the demand of how the infrastructure would be utilized. And that is already the first steps that we are still working on. And we have a kind of the pilot route in the port, where we are monitoring these kinds of activities. For example, we try a lot at one of the main routes in the port called Katwijk Bridge, Katwijk Jump, which is where this is the area where we have also a lot of industrial transports and the logistics inbound and outbound in the port. And we could really make use already the data from that infrastructure section, and to see how we could transform and scale up this kind of solution to another segment or area within the port, where we are trying to adopt these technologies, or at least when we plan the new segment of an infrastructure within the port, we are using more or less the same technology, so that we can transform our infrastructure step by step. Because at the end of the day, we know that the Hamburg port will not grow by size anymore, and therefore we would like also to work towards the visions on the infrastructure. We call it infrastructure as a service, because at the end of the day, the ecological size, so the environmental sides of the transport, has to be also taken into account into our activities. And we would like also to steer the demand of the logistics and transport services as such, that on the one hand, it will not create much a burden on the infrastructure use, and also not on the environmental use or the environmental impact into the port, so that we can kind of balance these demand and supply that we have as a limited resources within the port more effectively.
Yeah, I love how, outfitting infrastructure with smart technology can inform just better infrastructure planning to begin with, right? Instead of making everything smart, let's pave the road in a smarter way to begin with. So the knowledge that can come out of that, I think is so exciting. Chuck, I wonder, some of the key technologies that you mentioned were electrification, digital services. I think in our previous conversation, autonomous. Wondering how BMW is looking at implementing different innovations to change kind of the TDL.
Sure. So BMW is focusing on all three of those areas. It's kind of the future of the company there, as far as just not being metal bending or the ultimate driving machine going forward. So
sure.
The way we're taking that approach, it's a bit of a mind shift for the company. The company has been around for 100 years, and so it's really going ahead and trying to figure out, who are the thought leaders, who are the people that we ought to be partnering with. I mean, people like Bosch, for instance, other third-party folks that we're working with. And then we're also taking a more global approach. So I talked about the fact that we're based in Chicago, and we were really like the first kind of off-site development center for BMW outside of Munich, as far as doing, or outside Germany, as far as doing major software development. So now what we're looking at, we have a very large presence for onshore development and global development as well in China. We have set up a joint venture in Portugal where we're going to do a large spin-up of software development services. And then we're also working in Brazil as well. And, on one hand, it says, BMW is a very cost-conscious company as well and wants to give the, ultimate value proposition to the customer. So it makes sense for us kind of just on a wages and cost efficient basis to go ahead and also look globally around and figure out where we ought to go. But the key thing for us that we think we're bringing in right now, and we'll figure it out over time as we evolve in the whole strategy, is we are bringing in these disparate groups that aren't coming from just one mindset that's been built up over many years within kind of one central focused area within Munich, Germany, and the surrounding area. And now we're getting information exchange brought in from a lot of different places across the world. And because those areas that we're focusing on are really, they are global in nature, but then they also have their individual aspects needing some localization. For instance, like what's the best app in China versus, what's the preferred app in Germany versus the United States. I mean, the fact that we then get that shared knowledge across the different groups is what we think is bringing the strongest piece to the company. That's a lot on the digital services side. In addition, the real focus now is also to figure out, I mentioned Bosch earlier, other partners as well. A lot of the Silicon Valley startups or even major companies that are there. We can't sit still and say, we'll go our own path right now. We kind of have a phrase inside the company right now where we say, we don't have to be first all the time, even though we want to be innovative, but we want to be the best. So we're okay if we have to follow sometime, as long as then we can go ahead and give the best premium product to the customer. That being said, of course, we don't want to, shortcut ourselves on the innovation side. And so we need to go ahead and make sure those investments are happening. And so there's been a big shift ongoing and will continue to go, where if you look at where BMW used to focus, it was kind of like hardware here, software here. And then over time, that is shrinking to the point where there will be an inflection point. The curve will change, and at some point then software and services development will be what really drives the company going forward. And specifically, the reason why we're doing that is because of the external forces that are brought to bear on the company from other people like Tesla,
Sure.
that type of environment of companies, whether it's Apple, Google. And we've decided so far that because BMW really is such a strong brand, premium pricing, premium value to the customer, we want to own the data and do it ourselves in a bit of a vertical investment play. At some point, we also recognize the fact that we do need to partner horizontally.
Yeah, and I think not only you, but each of the other panelists have really talked about this this convening of different interests and different perspectives in order to really drive innovation that is sustainable or is scalable. And I know, Kate, at City Tech, that is the entire thesis that you guys have, is bringing together all those stakeholders, not only because that's where innovation really happens, but also that's how many partners you need oftentimes to bring something to bear or something to the market. And so as you have launched the kind of freight focus in the Advanced Mobility Initiative at City Tech, what are the different priorities that you're seeing from different stakeholders?
A lot of the priorities are first starting with more information, better understanding what the problem is. And so that's where we make sure we have as many data partners as possible that are able to take real-time information and then translate that into interventions, whether it's through long-term analysis or predictive analytics or that real-time piece as well. And then another piece that we're seeing is solving some of those bottlenecks within logistics of making sure we can satisfy immediate gratification. Like Julia mentioned, people want their items and they want them right now. But we're seeing some friction throughout urban areas, as well as some of the even first last mile to get to those urban areas, not even the doorstep where the package is going. So we're trying to better understand how we can leverage different real estate assets that are existing in Chicago, especially right now, to perform more so as those fulfillment centers and be maybe that letter K, and how you said it's going from A to K to Z. So we're looking at trying to expand Chicago's existing assets, and many of them are underground, and their weaknesses right now are that there's no mapping. And so we're working on the digital mapping to better navigate logistics through the underbelly of the city, through garages, and kind of these secret back channels that are going to be the shortcuts to make sure everyone is getting to where they want to go and quickly enough.
And I think, you know, a lot of this work has been in the pipeline for some time, and a bunch of partners have put a ton of resources in developing innovation. But of course, over the past 6 months, we've seen kind of an upending of how consumer expectations are met because of increased need. I think it was UPS that said, in 2019, there were 50 million same-day package deliveries just in the United States. And in 3 years before COVID, they anticipated that that number would double to 100 million same-day package deliveries in the US. And so, you know, COVID has had a ton of different impacts on transport and logistics. I wonder, what are some of the ones that you are seeing, each of you, within your own organizations, or even your ability to communicate with external partners? I think Dr. Pantian had a very specific example this morning of how digitization is actually a challenge, and sometimes you actually have to go back to the fax machine.
Yes, I could really guarantee that in the time of the pandemic, and where we just passed, actually, we are not yet passing the crisis totally, but we have passed the critical point already, at least in Germany. We know now how to tackle the issues in the way that the economy become already quite normal. Even though right now we are working from home mostly, but the business has been running non-stop, I would say. And from our point of view is that these kind of crises make us aware to focus on things in much better way, to really select what kind of technology or what kind of digital service and solutions that we have to really focus on, what is really make us very unique and to survive. And that is, I think everyone has now done this analysis for themselves, to really think about how to make the core of their business much stronger.
Yeah, I agree with everything Fenty was just saying there. It's we're a manufacturing company, along with all the digital services that we're delivering, and obviously the COVID situation has hurt us quite a bit. Certain areas like China have come back really strongly. The United States is now, Europe a little bit slower for us. The key for us really has been exactly what you said there, Fenty, and it's been to then force the company to really look at the entire operation and say, all right, now we really need to focus and say, we can't do everything. We're going to have to go ahead and find out what are really the value drivers for us internally. Where do we need to put our investment? Because we don't have an unlimited budget, right? And we have this uncertainty. So let's really just drive down and then focus on what are the key investment areas.
Yeah, and I think a key phrase that you used there, Chuck, investment. I wonder, Johannes, within the startup ecosystem, are you seeing a huge impact to startups in their funding goals or in the investments that they're seeking, just because priorities have shifted so much from traditional funding sources?
Yeah, I'd rather like to add what Pantian and Chuck had said, and then come to the funding question. So what we've seen, because we mingle here with large corporates and startups, and the corporates, most of them exactly showed what Pantian and Chuck said, focus. I mean, we have some family companies here who've been running successful businesses for over 150 years, multi-billion euro companies who drag along quite some body with them in terms of employees, in terms of production facilities, logistical backbone. They can only maneuver through such a situation if they focus really and focus on what they're strong at. On the other hand, the startups, and there has been lots of discussion also in Germany and Europe, whether this pandemic will now harm the startup ecosystem and how to support the startup ecosystem. And I would rather say, of what I've observed at the Digital Hub, if not the startups, who else is able to act fast and agile, to pivot their business models, because they don't carry the big body with them as established and traditional companies. So the startups really, the ones who took this crisis rather as a chance than as the final nail in the tomb, they are going along pretty well. That being said, the investment scenery has become a little bit more cloudy. So beforehand, there was everybody around the world, whether it's in maritime or in road logistics, they loved the upcoming mobility and logistic superstars and unicorns. It has become a little bit more difficult for the startups to secure funding, is my perspective. But this is not because they don't have great ideas or products, but because everybody is in a little bit of a gamble and uncertainty situation. So they don't simply know whether, hey, how is it going to look in spring? We rather hold back our money.
And I think the funding scheme that the government has been throwing into the market is also not really supporting much of these innovations scene. Most of the time, they're trying to secure, the sick company, and this sick company is trying to get the money from the government to survive. And that's why it's also a very tricky situation for the innovation, for the company driving innovation, that is not really get the enough support, because if we would like to have a targeted funding program, which is really promoting and also encouraging the company to do innovation during this type of time, we have to do it now, so that we could really accelerate the innovation level and leverage the innovation level of those companies, because then you combine the innovation with the survival instincts of the company, and then the company would be willing to do new things and not be sinking in the old mindset.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that startups just have this edge because they are more agile. They can pivot their business model very quickly. Kate, when you deal with the public and private partners and some of the reorganizing of priorities for freight and logistics, what are you seeing here locally in the US?
That question for me, I cut out just a second. Said the name. Okay.
Tell you.
Well, what we're trying to do is be very cautious, especially with the pandemic going on, as we're evaluating all of this data, trying to figure out what is necessarily true data and what is a result of the pandemic and what can you rely on to be long lasting. And what we're seeing in the US right now is a big boom in investment in terms of leasing real estate for freight and logistics. Forbes put out a report a couple weeks ago saying that JLL reported that over 50% of their leasing is now freight and logistics warehouses or hubs, compared to less than 36% prior to COVID. And so then we're starting to see a big boom here in Chicago with that interest. Chicago is so centrally located. We are approximately 24-hour drive from a third of Americans. And so we're just trying to understand if the behavior that we're seeing right now is going to be long lasting, or if the demand model is going to shift when hopefully we start to see everything kind of turn back into normal, or maybe the normal is going to be a new normal or a back to better type of attitude. But we're just trying to take caution with everything that's going on right now, so that we're not building some type of intervention or economic model for some type of congestion that is going to be based on what might have been an anomaly. So we're trying to be very patient with that information as it comes in.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I think another point that you made was really interesting, and I want to dig into it a little bit, is different segments of industry that are now kind of supporting TDL that didn't used to in this sort of way. So, so real estate, commercial real estate being repurposed. Are there any other really great examples of subsectors or parallel industries that are now seeing a lot of activity in conjunction with TDL?
For us, we have been able to engage more of our design partners. So Skidmore, Owings & Merrill is one of City Tech's partners, and we've been able to call on them to think about redesigning some of our roads to better accommodate freight and logistics, especially within that urban context as things are getting more crowded, trying to make it so it's a bit of a smoother transition throughout our streets, giving them a home on the street. And trying to figure out what that demand looks like. And maybe it is a pricing model, or maybe it is streets dedicated just to freight during certain hours of the day. But we're seeing our design partners get a little more creative with the street rather than it just being a road for all uses at all times.
Great.
Well, if I may add on that, because Kate, you mentioned earlier, and rightfully, that many corporations or many governmental institutions, many authorities are not able to handle huge tasks by themselves any longer. You need to cooperate, and you need to look to the left and to the right, up and down, to find partners to cooperate with. And just on a little side note, this Digital Hub Logistics in Hamburg is one of 12 physical hubs around Germany, each of them having a different industrial or content-wise focus. And before this pandemic happened, we were always in exchange and discussing, okay, what can we do together with the people who look into smart cities, or what can we do together with people who look into media technologies or insurance technologies. And what we've seen that over the last month, this cross-industry motivation also in transport and logistics has increased. That some companies are saying, hey, can you hook us up with the Hub for Media Technologies in Berlin and Potsdam? Because we want to find out how we can actually optimize some products in intralogistics by learning more about their computer vision technologies that have until now only been applied in media productions. And insurance is the topic, of course, everything that is more technical focus, IT security, artificial intelligence, that's something that nobody can neglect in logistics any longer.
I love that. Anything from Dr. or Chuck?
I think the transport and logistics is the service industry which actually everyone is consuming. almost in every level. Either you are personal or you are corporation. And that is actually where we also see how we look at the problems and try to have cross-industrial solution that could be also transformed into another area where we we use, for example, the VR and AR technologies. And right now we are using it to construct the port, to help the engineer seeing how the infrastructure projects that they are designing, planning, constructing in the computer, how it could look alike when it's going to be finished in real world. And that is already the starting point where we see different kind of technologies that we are utilizing in our area. But we are also seeing that some other partners within the pod ecosystems are also looking almost the same way, and where we could more or less doing the same products or having the same product innovation, and not only do it alone, but do in a kind of a consortium construct. And that is actually the new way of collaborations that we are experiencing more in these TDL segments as well.
Yeah, for BMW's perspective, I mean, as much as I like to talk about digital and, you know, the way of software and everything for the company, I mean, logistics are the key thing that really drives the company. Even though we're not the biggest unit volume producer, only 2.5 million units a year, that's still 2.5 million that you have got to have a fully functioning logistics path to basically build cars, robotics in the plants, get cars out, and then go ahead and deliver them to the end customer. So I talked about a little bit earlier that one of the things that we're doing on the digital side is we're really like vertically investing as opposed to doing horizontal approach. On the logistics side, we also do some vertical investments where you may not be branded BMW, for instance, but there's investments that, you know, the controlling shareholders make into these other areas because we understand how these things sync up and basically will make the whole process more efficient for us. That's one avenue that the company's been investing in, and also the shareholder base as well. Additionally, then we also have a number of different tech groups with the company, one based in Mountain View, for instance, here in the United States, and they are specifically dedicated to looking at proof of concept, proof of value, you know, basically new technologies. And one of the key focus areas is really on the logistics side. So, you know, there's the cool stuff like VR, AR, all that type of stuff, machine learning. But for us, it really starts kind of what's the bread and butter of what we're doing today and what we've done over the past 100 years or so. And so we put a lot of the focus on, you know, what you might think is a Silicon Valley based software group out there, looking at things that are really logistically focused. And a lot of it will come into play with like improvements in machine learning software, things like that. But really the key focus for us, one of the drivers there is to figure out how we can improve that and then basically take that entire supply chain and just drive it down to be as efficient as possible.
And so there are a couple of things that I've heard that I want to dig into a little bit more. So there's an initial layer of, you know, foundation that needs to be put in place, and a platform for consortiums to really do innovation together. But the more fringe topics that we've been talking about that are driving, you know, new innovations in logistics, I'd love to get in there a little bit more, because that's the side that I think lights up people's imagination a little bit more. And so the science fiction kind of elements that people think are so far on the horizon, you know, the Jetsons, their time frame was 2063. So we still have time to get to our flying cars. But, you know, in the test beds that that you guys have in Hamburg, and, you know, the organizations here in North America that are testing different, you know, fringe technologies, I wonder what do you think is actually going to be normalized much faster than people would imagine? So like robots that walk behind you instead of the mail carrier holding the bag, the drones that are going to be lifting these huge containers to remove them. What are some of the things that we predict are going to be faster to market than people might imagine?
Now, if I could just start, I mean, one thing that from our perspective won't be fast, just to start with that, won't be faster to market is the full autonomous driving. So there's the different levels that you're probably aware of.
Sure.
And people make claims on things. I mean, we're all about, of course, premium value and safety. And so we think we'll get to a certain point, but then, there are things like city infrastructures and other things that are going to really hold back to get to that final level that you need to do. But that's one thing where I think it'll be a little bit longer, at least from our perspective at BMW. An area where I think it's actually accelerating for us is the Internet of Things. So how we are connecting, I mean, specifically on the digital services side, so that, it's your phone, and then with us, it's the car ecosystem, right? But then it's not just that, it's like, have your garage door go up, have your mirror, in the morning say, this is the status of my car, and this is kind of my calendar and where I need to go. And so there's, millions of use cases. I think other people probably are better, attuned to this than me. But I think that actually is where we're seeing something that'll accelerate and just continue to have, there's so many different use cases that, the key ones will go ahead and get the right investment, and we'll see those a lot sooner than probably we think. Although I'm not sure about the flying car yet. So we'll see.
Beth, I'm hoping that it's electrification, that we start to see that come about even faster than anticipated, and that electric freight vehicles start to have more ease while they're traveling, with more places to stop and charge up. We know that freight is a big contributor to the pollution and the high rate of emissions that we're seeing right now, and something that we've learned over pandemic. There's a study in California. For the longest time, they said if everyone just worked from home for 1 day a week, we'd be able to meet our emissions goals. And then all of a sudden, everyone's working from home. And they didn't see the progress that they thought they would. And they recognized it was an increase in freight. And so without freight taking that step towards electrification, we'll still be pretty far off from our goals. So from an environmental standpoint and from the standpoint of a few other efficiency, it'd be great to see electrification more available really soon.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's an important role that public policy comes into play in order to accelerate that, like with California. And their governor declaring by 2030, is it, that all city vehicles and all vehicles on the roads will be electric. Sorry, Johannes, I was really excited for your fitness organization.
I was wanting to give Pantian the chance first, but I'll. I haven't really got too much to add in terms of expectations, what Chuck and Kate said. I think what is always important, because you touched upon that in your question, to really inspire and to draw ideas and to draw pictures of how the future could look like. I think it's important to also to draw these pictures. We had a couple of years ago, our port terminal operator in Hamburg, they put out big pictures with drones carrying containers and a hyperloop bringing the containers from the terminal into the countryside. Whether that's going to happen or not doesn't really matter too much, as long as it inspires and as long as it points a little seed into startup ideas. And to fetch that really far, and once again, I have nothing really to add to electrification, and also I think in the process world, lots of artificial intelligence products and services will become quite handy in the next 5 years. But again, to fetch that really far in logistics and transportation, I always hear, yes, well, it's a good idea, but at the end of the day, we transport physical goods. It will always be a container, and we will have to try to make that more sustainable, the transportation, etc. now I'm saying it for the third time, to fetch it really far. There has been a startup in the UK who just before Corona got quite some funding, fashion, who looked into the retours of fashion online stores based on the fact that a certain generation, up to 25, only orders fashion online to take one picture in that new shirt, in that new skirt, in that new hoodie, take one picture to upload that to Instagram or Pinterest or whatsoever to say, hey, look at my new shoes, look at whatever I got. And this startup said, if it's only used once, you can virtualize that. Mm-hmm. And they built an online store with online virtual fashion that you can buy, that has an algorithm to put the shirt on you as if you were wearing it. You can take a picture of it without ever owning that clothes. So I thought, well, that I still think it's absolutely crazy, and I don't really understand how you want to put money into such a startup, but it's an inspirational idea, because it shows the saying you can't virtualize transported goods. Who knows where we are in 10 or 20 years? Huh?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, especially with, you know, the ecological impact of fast fashion, so to speak. So it's almost, you know, this new shoptivism. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I agree with Jonas that maybe we are already the elder generation, I would say, to talk about these kind of things, because recently I have been talking also with one of the youngest startup or entrepreneur in Germany. He's 17 years old, and he also told me, the corporation is still underestimating the impact of this Z generations who is coming up, and we have actually no clue how do they behave, and how will they behave in the future, because at some point of time they will become employees, they will become like the consumers, the real consumer who earn monies. And that is actually the generation that maybe we should look for, how to produce the product for them. And if you don't understand them, you are just producing the product for the elder generation. And that is actually where we have to see how the science fictions go, to understand this generation first, and then to see what would be the product that they would probably buy and even spend money in the future.
Yeah, I love that. I think that there's a really important mixture between them informing product development or innovation, but also them understanding a lot more of kind of the nitty-gritty details of product manufacturing. I think that would probably inspire a lot of the new science fiction business models that will come. So I love, you know, the commitment that a lot of organizations have into mentoring or educating the younger population, just because so many insights will come out of those very, very simple discussions in the classroom. So a question about, I think, the thought leadership that Chicago and Hamburg have when it comes to TDL. You know, Hamburg, you guys have both mentioned that there's a fixed amount of infrastructure and there's a fixed capacity, and it's all about creating optimizations and efficiencies in the use of it and transporting goods through it. What are some of those insights that other cities can really glean or learn from when they are really developing or setting foundation for an effective, sector within their geography?
So actually we have a shared knowledge, or we are building a kind of a common knowledge through what's so-called chain port, which is the initiative between 13 ports right now around the world, where we are exchanging the knowledge of how we have been deploying or realizing the visions of what we call smart port concept. And this smart port concept has been actually initiated or has been used as a marketing word by the Port of Hamburg during the IAPH Port and Harbor Conference 2015, and since then we have formed up this kind of the network among the port authorities and the port operators around the world, because we realize that we have more or less the same vision, we have more or less the same problems, we are confronting more or less the same customers, and how we could really do collaborate so that we can see how the use cases and how the technological innovation that we are exploring can be shared as a knowledge, so that we do not need to utilize our capacities in trying everything, because it costs money. So we better form our capacities, making combine the capacity, combine the common interest, and then develop things together. And that's why since then we have created different working groups and also projects together, so that we can explore more into the issue like digital twins, cybersecurity, how we can transform the organization of the Port Authority in this digital transformation as a learning organization to make us more resilient. Or we do, for example, with the idea of how we could make the port being connected nodes around the world, because logistics is the industries where we have these process chain horizontally across different supply chain actors and logistics actors, and how we would connect these actors with the technical platforms, data sharings, so that we could manage the process in much better way. And we would like to start from ourselves first, to see how we can make a real exchange between Hamburg and Rotterdam, even though we are competitors, how we could do collaborate in those sense with Antwerp or Le Havre, or maybe into the Los Angeles port, and so on. And that is where we already started to do kind of those things. And I think there will be more to come.
And here locally, I wonder, you know, we're not focused in seaport, but much more in rail and road. Kate, and Chuck, because Chicago is the hub for both of your organizations, I wonder, what are the ways that we can inform best practices within rail and road?
For City Tech, we've been fortunate to be able to use Chicago as a great test bed. So that's kind of our meat and potatoes, is doing the solution development, giving them trial runs and seeing if they're working. And so for us, those best practices are making sure that there is cross-sector representation during those pilots. And also that when we have those pilots, we fail fast and then move on to the next one as quickly as possible. And then we want to make sure that we have widespread lesson sharing for anything that we've learned from it. We enjoy Chicago as a test bed because it's great for scaling upwards and scaling downwards. And here in the US, if we can take those best practices that we've learned and try to apply them to some of the other Midwest cities that we recognize as post-industrial or legacy cities that are still kind of hurting from America's past, but might be able to leverage that information to become transit and logistic hubs of their own, maybe not to the scale of Chicago or Hamburg, but something to help them have a bit of a revival. So for us, it's all about being really intentional in the pilots, making sure we're prioritizing the right ones, and we prioritize them through that cross-sector collaboration to make sure what is important to the majority rises to the top, test them well, and share that information.
Great.
To add on to what Kate was saying, so we view Chicago as well as really like a test bed. So a couple of years ago, I headed up a car sharing initiative with our Reach Now, you might know it as Drive Now program, which isn't around anymore. But
it's my favorite thing. Oh, I loved it.
But We work with World Business Chicago and the mayor's office to basically, get our foot in the door and use Chicago as a key major city in the United States to go ahead and test out car sharing, and ran a pilot program for a while before, we went ahead and figured out it just wasn't going to work for us as a company, not the city itself. So I like what Kate said about that, where you can start things, turn them off. And so, coming out of the digital world software side, I'm a pretty firm believer in the, fail fast and learn what you do and then move on type thing. And so that's really what we've seen so far from being able to work within the city, within the transportation groups. I'm a member of the Illinois Autonomous Vehicle Association, so we've got a great partnership with that right now as far as, trying to figure out how we should go ahead and test out autonomous driving, and then partnering within the entire Midwest region as well for what we can do logistically on that. And then I know Kate said, go ahead and disseminate the information, best practices, things like that. I will say one thing about BMW is we keep things a little bit more closer to the vest probably. And so, we don't like to share all of our failures outside, but some things that are public, we're happy to go ahead and make some announcements about it and then share in forums like this. Otherwise, we kind of do it more, under the radar. So, but we are running a lot of different programs like that. Another area that we participate with is sponsoring a group at University of Illinois Chicago, actually a class, a year-long class where they go ahead and take, what our strategic goals are, and then basically kind of run wild and try to figure out, where we should take it as a company. And it really informs us because, they're off there in more of a university incubator setting, probably closer to what Johannes and his group are doing there. And then they can come back to us, and it's a nice intake vehicle for us because, we're more like corporate, this is the mission. And then we have this other group out there where kind of, I don't want to say that you guys run wild there, Johannes, but basically, come with more creative mindset.
Yeah, you know why I'm wearing a hat today? Because my haircut ran wild over the last month. So, but that's about the only thing why, in terms of running wild. No, I think, Chuck, I really agree with what you said. And you know why I love my job so much? Because working at a big corporate that is probably also listed on a stock exchange, you have to take care of many, many things. And the word innovation or digitization, as sexy as it may sound, always has some implications on employers, on your profitability, on the products you sell. So we have to be careful in saying, hey, everything is great and we can experiment and run around and run wild. There are many thousands of people depending on it because they work for BMW, they work for the Hamburg Port Authority or for DHL. But the exciting thing is, I think, having institutions like Kate's or mine, is that we can really try out new things, and we see a lot of new things. And I mean, we wouldn't be here this morning or afternoon if we were happy with things that have been going for the last 40 years. And it's simply exciting to see what new things are being tried out. And as Chuck has said, some things have been tried out, and with car sharing, maybe it didn't work, maybe the next time with a little different angle it will work. And at the beginning, now I'm drifting away a little bit, I stopped talking in a second, but at the beginning of the year, when Corona was not in Europe just yet, I thought, okay, what innovation push are we going to do this year? And I looked a little bit around and looked 100 years back in the 1920s, in the roaring 20s or the golden 20s. And so many innovations that happened 100 years ago still have so much of an impact in terms of economic, social, and technical lifestyle that we lead, that we may enter now a new golden 20 era and have many, many exciting innovations coming out of the time that we live in. So that's why it's so much fun, or should be so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, couldn't agree more. I think as we're wrapping up and winding down this session, You know, this is, I think, our opportunity to highlight why Chicago and Hamburg are such great test grounds for startups or other organizations to come and participate in the innovation that's happening. And so would love just a quick wrap up from each of you talking about why Hamburg is home or why Chicago is home, and how you feel adding to the ecosystem will just drive a lot of really great innovation or substantial change to TDL going forward.
Okay, I'll jump in. Yeah, so Chicago's home for us because this is where we really can get some of that digital and software talent that we were looking for. I was talking about the globalization of the investment by the company moving outside Germany, even though Germany is fantastic, you know, engineers as well, of course. But then there's this, you know, kind of breadth that you get, you know, and then these other ideas coming in from going out globally. And so Chicago is a place that really has, you know, the right environment for us as far as getting that type of talent. I also referred in that last chat there about our partnership with the University of Illinois Chicago. So Hamburg has great universities as well, Berlin, Munich in Germany. Chicago has, I mean, I can count at least 10 really great colleges and universities that are right here in our ecosystem. And so for us, as far as like building a place outside Germany, it was a natural because we really thought that this was the right place to go ahead and drive the innovation for the company.
Love that. Yeah, I think the exact count is over 100 different universities and
I'm
colleges
sure.
here in Chicago. It's incredible. Yeah, I agree. It's great.
Tommy, if I could jump in. So I just really answered this question yesterday because I'm the part of the member of the committee on innovation and research for the Hamburg Chamber of Commerce, and we are tackling this question really, why Hamburg is the city which the innovation is born. And we just made a claim, innovation made in Hamburg is the innovation that the world should know. And that is because we have the right ingredients in terms of the assets, in terms of resources, on the talent that we have here. We actually, not so many people knows that Hamburg has also a lot of universities, a lot of research institutes in world-class qualities, and also we have a lot of diversifications of the industries that are situated in these cities. And Hamburg is not just a city, but the metropolitans. If you are coming to Hamburg, you are touching the metropolitans of in the northern Europe, in the northern Germany, and that is actually where you have a lot of the variety of the playground. And one of the good things that Hamburg is the most or the smartest cities, as the index today shows in Germany, that we are remaining as the top ranking, and where we could really attract the people. And last but not least, Hamburg is also holding the happiness index in the highest of the total.
It's great. I think it's Johannes and you bring the intelligence indicator up, probably.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that Chicago and Hamburg are both home to more or less unsuccessful soccer clubs at the moment. The Hamburg one having a little bit more history than Chicago Fire, but no, I have nothing too much to add to what Pantian has said. I think what's also important when you want to develop your city or your transportation, mobility, and logistics ecosystem, again here history has shown that most of the companies or people who've pushed forward in history always had some kind of will, maybe also a little bit of greed to push things forward. And many people here in Hamburg have that, I suppose also in Chicago, and that's also important, that we are happy, Pantian is right, and we are very fortunate to live in a city like Hamburg, but nonetheless, we are always eager to improve and take a next step forward. And Hamburg is a good test bed to do so.
Great. And anything to add about Chicago Pride, Kate?
Just kind of a fun fact. So the Chicago Architecture Center always does Open House Chicago, usually in October, not this year because of pandemic, but last year at one of the sites, they had one of my, it just caught my attention. They had defined Chicagoism and what that meant. And Chicagoism was defined as a state or condition of a city that is experimental or promoter of dreams. And that always stuck with me because it really rings true for Chicago. From our skyscrapers to our roads, we've always been very creative and experimental. And I think we're just seeing that continue. And that's what we can kind of thank for a lot of the growth that we've seen recently.
Beautiful.
Yeah, one last thing just to add on Chicago as well is we already talked about it, but the fact that there's this huge community of companies, whether it's logistics, manufacturing, software, technology focused, and then, you know, as this is a perfect example of the fact that Chicago has partners around the globe, and the city and also groups like World Business Chicago that really, you know, want to go ahead and improve, as Johannes was saying, you know, there is that drive to say, here's where we are today, but we want to get, you know, here and stuff. So that whole infrastructure that's here that we all enjoy on a day-to-day basis and probably take for granted most of the time, I mean, that's been built up over however many years, and that really also kind of is uplifting on its own.
Love that. Yeah, it's perfect note to end on. Organizations like WBC enabling and showcasing a lot of the innovation that is occurring in both of our sister cities. So I so appreciate you panelists and the insights that you brought to discussion today. I would encourage everybody watching to reach out either through LinkedIn or, you know, post any questions and we can certainly get back. But thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Beth. I want to just add, this is Kyle from World Business Chicago. I want to thank Pantheon, Kate, Chuck, and Johannes for just an incredible conversation and kind of chilling to know that we're getting closer and closer to what the Jetsons were moving in, and that's happening from Chicago and Hamburg. So thank you all for being here today. Beth, I'll speak for myself, but if you ever want to host a podcast, I would subscribe. You are a fantastic moderator. You were great to listen to, so thank you. And I would like to also thank my partner in this, Kolja Harders from Hamburg, who with his help has brought Hamburg and Chicago closer together and made this a reality. So thank you, Kolja. You were awesome to work with. And thank each of you who were joining us today to hear about the digitization of the TDNL industry and where this important sector that moves goods and people is heading to, and how Chicago and Hamburg are leaders in that space. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. We very much appreciate it. And with that, this concludes today's exchange between Hamburg and Germany. We look forward to seeing you at our next program. Thank you all.